Welcome back to my critique of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I had some trouble deciding which story threads to cover when, so I just sort of rolled a die. Fate has determined that the major characters can wait, and we'll be dealing with the worthless ones this time. We'll start with the worst and get better from there. There's some terrible characters in New Ghostbusters, but the unequivocal worst is Callie. Callie Spengler is one of the worst mothers in all of media. She shows absolutely no concern for either of her children, and even less concern for her purported boyfriend, Gary. She is a lazy turd who does the absolute minimum, with a resting face that shouts to the world how much she wants to murder her family. It's no wonder her father Egon abandoned her even before he was a Ghostbuster. Yeah, they messed up the timeline. Callie was apparently born in 1982, 2 years prior to the creation of the Ghostbusters. I guess it's so Janine wouldn't be her mother, but what do I know? Egon, being a genius deadbeat dad with a stable job in academics, is certainly an interesting choice, though. I wonder how Harold Ramis would feel about that retcon, having been one of the writers of the original movie and all. I sense several spinning graves. Whatever. Let's jump into her story. Now that they're in New York, Callie rides shotgun in Ecto 1. Why she's not the driver when she has none of the useful skills or knowledge that they need as Ghostbusters is a complete mystery. But I can only assume it's because driving would be too much effort. As their car loses power, she barks at her son to risk electrocution to fix it.
Actually, guys, I'm fine. Mom says I'm fine.
And her daughter uses her first name to respond because she doesn't respect her mother at all. But Callie gets an early win when she flies the drone trap and catches the Hell's Kitchen sewer dragon ghost. Now, wouldn't it make way more sense for Trevor to drive the drone? Aren't adults notoriously bad at flying those? She could have driven the RC car trap, but no, Trevor gets to be somehow more worthless than Callie as a Ghostbuster. Oh, and as soon as the ghost is captured, she stops flying the drone, because I guess it has autopilot and a tracking device to find them wherever they are in the city. Ugh, there's not much story here, huh? In the mayor's office, Callie shows zero interest in protecting their livelihoods as Ghostbusters. And though the mayor does have a good point this time around, she has absolutely no interest in defending her daughter, and pulls Gary back when he embarrasses himself trying. Back at headquarters, Trevor finds that the ceiling in his room is leaking, and Callie tells him to deal with it on his own. She shows no interest in helping her son, guiding a young know-nothing and trying to learn how to fix problems in their home. I mean, if she were a real character, she might at least care that a leaky ceiling means a leaky roof, which means thousands of dollars in repairs. This would be especially true for a woman who grew up poor and has never had stable finances. But we've forgotten about all that, haven't we? Trevor is 18 now, so maintenance of the 100-year-old building falls to him, for reasons. She collects the laundry from Phoebe, who objects to being benched as a Ghostbuster. Callie remarks that maybe she should try being a normal kid for a while. Phoebe responds with a complete misunderstanding of history and biology. In the 18th century, she would be a 15-year-old girl in the workforce with 4 kids of her own. Patriarchy! Except no. And her mother would be dead, because no one in the 18th century lived to be 42 in Phoebe's addled brain. Is she really supposed to be the smart one in this family? Callie is unfazed by any of the conversation, because she absolutely doesn't care. In fact, the only way she could conceivably care less would be to not be listening at all. Gary is going to show the family an inappropriate movie, and the only response from their mother is wondering if it's family-friendly, before relenting immediately when Gary says it's not. On the way to the basement, Callie reiterates that this is the time in Phoebe's life when she should make mistakes. This seems to be one of the themes of the film, but it's certainly a stupid one. Phoebe already has a criminal history in Oklahoma. How much more trouble should her mother want her to get into? Also, didn't Callie spend the majority of the first movie scolding Phoebe for getting in trouble? And don't many of the types of trouble that 15-year-old girls typically get into result in grandchildren? Is that the type of trouble she means? And we can't even acknowledge that Phoebe is a nerd and wouldn't get into that kind of trouble, because her intelligence has been steadily declining since the movie began. Her very next line is,
Okay, well, 3 years is nothing for you guys. It's a tiny, negligible percentage of your lifespan.
How does this math and science genius not understand that as you age, 3 years becomes a greater percentage of your remaining lifespan, not a smaller percentage? 3 years of life means more, mathematically, to Callie and Gary than it does to Phoebe, but she thinks the opposite because she's a moron. But we'll get to our stupid little Juno clone in another video. Phoebe's intellect might just be genetic, though, because Callie's proudest life achievement seems to be that she briefly became the gatekeeper and almost ended the world. Oh, and having sex on the first date. Yep, real role model here. After a jump cut involving an insult from her daughter, Callie helps Gary close the containment unit, setting up the power of love moment for later. And while Gary discusses the issue with Janine, Callie lazes on the couch upstairs, refusing to help Trevor with the leak problem because he's an adult now. She is so distracted by her cell phone game that she doesn't notice her son's solution to the problem is a ghost trap and a proton pack. Doesn't bother her at all that her 18-year-old idiot son is attacking what she thinks is a water leak in the ceiling with a nuclear reactor. She definitely wants one less child, and doesn't care which one or how it happens. Callie continues her role as a Ghostbuster largely off-screen until Phoebe is arrested for blowing up the stone lion outside the library. She officially fires Phoebe, as if that hadn't happened earlier in the film anyway. This interaction is completely uncalled for. Phoebe wasn't in the wrong at the library, but I'll get to that later. She is, however, a heinous brat that deserves a good slap across the face from her mother, but Callie doesn't really care enough to do anything like that. They return home to their seized firehouse, and Callie makes her recently arrested daughter pick the locks to break in. Callie immediately rushes upstairs to pack her things and leave the life of a Ghostbuster behind forever. It's that important to her. And it's only several hours after Phoebe runs away from home, rendezvous with her secret ghost friend, summons the ice-pocalypse, and nearly freezes to death in Brooklyn that Callie notices or worries about her daughter. Oddly, her method of comforting her daughter is to say that she's not in trouble for what she did. It's actually Gary who cares about her health. As the world ends around them, Callie lets Gary comfort her hypothermic depressed daughter. What's odd is that Phoebe says,
"Trusted somebody that I shouldn't have."
Wouldn't a single mother like Callie have some insight into Phoebe's problem? And wasn't it central to Callie's character to feel stupid or duped by the men in her life, both her father and her ex-husband? This seems like a perfect opportunity for her to not only bond with her daughter in a way that hasn't yet been attempted, but also to develop both characters. This was a completely missed opportunity, because they didn't want the movie to be about Callie's relationship with anyone. What a waste. Also that they can give Gary a minor plotline that should have happened off-screen between movies. At least, it would have been between movies if Callie were a real character. His need for a storyline is her fault, but we'll get to that later. The rest of the movie portrays Callie as very worried about Phoebe. Sometimes. But this newfound concern doesn't mean she's learned her lesson or became a better mother. I mean, Trevor is almost killed when the possessor spirit takes control of a proton pack and fires it at him. But when she rushes in, late, she says,
"Where's Phoebe?"
Concern for her daughter when her son came within an inch of death moments before means only one thing to me. If Trevor is on the verge of death, then whatever Phoebe is simultaneously screwing up must be 10 or 15 times worse. They are the Spanglers, after all. Callie makes one more attempt to find Phoebe, which is interrupted when Garaka arrives. She has a short attention span, you see, and deadly danger to herself and her father's friends trumps looking for her missing daughter. Then there's not much else with Callie. She's the first to join the power of love moment with Phoebe, and after everything else is done, she gives Trevor the keys to Ecto-1, indicating that with precisely no developing scenes, she has changed her mind about his maturity and capability as an adult. Terrible. That would normally be a good segue into Trevor's character, but I said I'd discuss the characters as they got better. Trevor, despite being the second worst character in Afterlife, is not the second worst character in Frozen Empire. By a tiny hair, that distinction falls to Lucky. Lucky is utterly useless in this movie. In fact, it's really weird that she's in it at all. In Afterlife, Lucky was a pointless love interest for Trevor, and served as the Winston Zedmore of the new Ghostbusters group. That is, she had no reason to be there whatsoever, but was useful because they needed extra help sometimes. Sorry, Winston, but that's what you were, an extra helper. Her main character trait was having roots in Oklahoma, but wanting to leave anyway. So, as you can plainly see, we are starting with a truly inspiring and fully fleshed out character that the audience should absolutely care about. Sarcasm aside, Lucky is forgettable, and should probably have been jettisoned when they moved the plot to New York. But no, she's now an 18-year-old from Oklahoma with no scientific or paranormal background who has inexplicably received an internship in Winston's Ghostbusters Engineering Corps. I should definitely point out that the Gozer incident, in which Lucky briefly became the gatekeeper, took place 3 years ago. Why would Winston hire her, fly her out to New York City, and have her assist in high-tech research in which she is clearly neither intelligent enough nor in any way qualified to participate? Well, that would be because Winston's Ghostbusters Corporation is horrible, but that is definitely a different video. Oh, and because it's 2024, she's no longer a love interest for Trevor. I would say for unknown reasons, but let's not kid ourselves. We all know the reasons. Luckily, there's not much of Lucky in this movie. She mostly toils in the background of the various laboratories, every once in a while injecting something into the conversation that she shouldn't really know.
If we went trap by trap on regular shifts, it could take anywhere between 3 to 7 years.
Where does that number come from? The other thing she does, which may be why she was included in this movie, is some decent fear acting in the moments when their systems fail. Celeste O'Connor does an actual good job acting in this movie. I just wish there were a real rationale for her to be there in the first place. She also contributes some cringe-inducing sex jokes to the movie, so there's that aspect of her character as well. When the engineering team and Trevor visit Nadim's apartment, she immediately hones in on a painting of a woman playing with a man's nipples. Then she continues the joke by calling the brass-lined room a sex dungeon. I mean, the movie even points out how bad the jokes are.
Stop making sex jokes about my recently deceased grandmother.
If I'm being honest, there are really only 3 parts of the movie where Lucky actually matters to the plot, and not in a good way. The first is when Phoebe and Melody sneak into Winston's aquarium complex in the middle of the night to release Garaka. Lucky is just randomly there to fight Garaka for the first time. Phoebe had to pick the locks to get in, and Lucky is an intern. Why would she be there in the middle of the night, alone? Does she live there? Anyway, this incident gives us 2 things. The knowledge that the regular proton packs have no effect on Garaka, which for some reason everyone ignores when Lucky tells them, and a shot that they used in the trailers but cut from the film. The second part occurs on the roof of Ghostbusters headquarters, where Lucky and Trevor are sent to be lookouts for signs that Garaka is approaching. They prove utterly worthless in this scene by allowing Peter Venkman to sneak up to the building wearing a bright orange coat. Look at this. They're on the roof, the cold is moving in, then cut to the front doors of the headquarters, where Venkman opens the door. No warning whatsoever. What is the point of these morons? And the third part when Lucky actually matters to the plot is a few scenes later, when she idiotically presses the tip of her proton pack to a self-propelled paper airplane, allowing the possessor spirit, which she knows about, to enter her pack and threaten Trevor. Let's watch this one. She's immobilized against the table, then the gun aims itself at Trevor and fires. Gary jumps in to help, but the beam bends because of Nadim's power. And suddenly, Lucky is no longer wearing the proton pack when Podcast arrives to smash it. Isn't that lucky? A camera cut saved her from a broken back and radiation poisoning. So yeah, Lucky is superfluous to the film, and fails at all the tasks she's given by the other characters. She is stupid, sex-obsessed, unqualified, and incompetent. She also stands around in the last critical moments of the Garaka battle, helping neither the Spanglers to keep Garaka at bay, nor the original Ghostbusters to set the trap. She literally stands next to a locker doing nothing. To be as fair as possible, Podcast also doesn't help, but he has 2 valid excuses. He's the only character that wasn't given a proton pack, and he was fighting off the Stay Puft Marshmallow Minis inside Ecto-1. Lucky just didn't feel like helping anyone. Anyway, let's move on to Trevor, whose entire arc is based on his newfound adultness. It's not really a character arc, but the movie seems to treat it like one. There are 2 aspects to this pseudo-character arc. The first is that Trevor has turned 18, and is obsessed with that fact. However, because he's not worthy of any level of respect, he's completely ignored and not treated as an adult, which causes some poorly developed psychological turmoil. The second aspect is that Callie exploits Trevor's insecurities to shirk any responsibility for him as a parent. It starts right at the beginning, when the Ghostbusters chase the Hell's Kitchen sewer dragon across town. Ecto-1 is overheating, and the electrical system fails, so Callie yells at Trevor to fix it. Trevor asks for respect, and no one listens. He then shocks himself, and Callie dismisses his pain. Pretty standard for this movie. Jump to the mayor's office. Walter Peck of the EPA is now the mayor of New York City. How typical. This is probably the most realistic thing about this movie, that an inept environmental bureaucrat rises to the top office of New York City. We're meant to think of him as the same idiot who blew up the containment unit in 1984, but he actually has a point in this one. The Spanglers and Gary have no licenses, no clients, no contracts, no training, no business plan, no regard for public or private safety, and they were employing 2 minors, until one of them turned 18, for no pay in the most dangerous positions of an already dangerous occupation. They're not in the right here by any definition. But as it applies to Trevor, Peck asks Phoebe how old she is, and Trevor makes an unsolicited remark, declaring himself an adult. He's clearly touchy about it, but that's it for the mayor's office. Back at headquarters, Trevor is complaining about a leak in the ceiling. Let's remember that they've lived here for quite some time, so this is not a new problem, but of course Callie doesn't care. Apparently, it's just the job for a boy detective, because parenting or even adulting is too much for Callie. Later on, we see that the leak is actually a thick green slime. He once again approaches his mother for help, and she says,
"You're an adult, right?"
He takes a ghost trap into the attic, where he hears growling coming from a pile of empty junk food wrappers. He discovers Slimer, the first ghost that the original Ghostbusters trapped, and their companion from the cartoon, and is predictably slimed. He doesn't even get to change clothes before the family is called out on a ghost hunt, sans Phoebe. But no one seems to care that the Ghostbusters headquarters is actually haunted. Seems like a bad endorsement for the Ghostbusters to have a ghost infestation, but who really cares? Winston sure doesn't. At Winston's aquarium laboratory, Trevor reunites with Lucky, minus the love interest. They'll be tag-teaming to investigate Nadim later, but they can't continue the budding love story from the first movie while Lucky is recovering from her sex addiction. The next time we see Trevor, he's scattering bait to lure Slimer into a trap. This time he has a proton pack as well. Super safe. No parental supervision required. This plan is thwarted when the basement walls fall apart. Shouldn't that condemn the building? You know, when the foundations crumble? But no, Callie likes her family sleeping on the second and third floors of a building that could collapse at any moment. Ignoring all that, because the movie does as well, we jump again to learning that the orb is super cold and communicates with other ghosts, causing them to act strangely. Lars, the engineer guy, believes it's probably controlling them. So, Trevor and Lucky team up with him to ask Nadim where it came from. Trevor shares a moment with Nadim, bonding over their shared mediocrity. He does, however, contribute the discovery that the brass room is soundproof. When they discover that Nadim gives off psychokinetic energy, he accompanies them to the lab, but then he's inexplicably in the police station after Phoebe destroys the library lion. No story here. And when the world starts to end, he helps Lucky be the most useless lookout ever. Once they finally notice the possessor spirit is coming, Winston calls them back inside. Trevor tries to reassure Nadim, and we get an unintentionally hilarious burn based on Trevor's story arc.
Could one of the adults also come and help?
Then, of course, Lucky touches her proton pack to a self-propelled paper airplane, because they clearly weren't just warned about the possessor spirit, the most dangerous type of spirit according to Ray, approaching the building, and Trevor's life is threatened. Nadim, whom Trevor just pledged to protect, ends up protecting him by bending the proton beam away from his face and out a nearby window. Irony? Whatever. The possessor spirit moves into a pizza box on the counter, and the pizza box bounces off the counter and into Slimer's mouth, ending Trevor's Slimer investigation, I guess. Wait a second. There's something way more interesting than Trevor to talk about here. Where did that pizza come from? The firehouse was seized by the government. Nadim has been practicing his Firemaster stuff this whole time. The Spanglers went to pick up Phoebe, and the effing world is ending. Who ordered a pizza in the middle of the apocalypse? And not only that, they left it completely uneaten on a kitchen counter. Who wrote this? Trevor's mom arrives to not care that her son came face to face with death, and then they all go downstairs to face Garaka. Trevor joins the Spanglers in their power of love moment, and afterwards, when the Hell's Kitchen sewer dragon chases Slimer out of their headquarters, Callie treats him like an adult by letting him drive Ecto-1 because of all the character development we've seen from both of them in this film. Ugh. But that mishmash of disjointed scenes is Trevor's arc. While I'm at it, I guess I'll finish this video with Walter Peck. He's not the fourth worst character in the film, mostly because almost everything he says is reasonable this time around. In the first movie, he assumed the Ghostbusters were conning people by releasing harmful chemicals and hallucinogens when they weren't. This time around, he accuses them of destroying property and endangering lives, which they did. He's not lying, and, outside the trailers, doesn't say anything that's completely false. Peck gets 3 scenes. One where he benches Phoebe and declares his intentions to shut down the Ghostbusters. One where he arrests Phoebe for vandalizing the library lion and actually does shut down the Ghostbusters. And one right at the end where Gary, Winston, and the media change the narrative and make everyone forget that the world-ending event that the Ghostbusters just stopped was actually entirely caused by them. Fake news indeed. And the guy that is trying to protect the public from people who seem to constantly be putting the lives and livelihoods of civilians in danger, and who literally, not figuratively, almost ended the world, just gets called a clown and dismissed. What great storytelling. What great morality. Ugh. Why are you making me defend Walter Peck? Anyway, that's it for this video. If you liked it, please consider clicking the little buttons below and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.